Unmute yourself. Everybody, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. So you said you checked out last week and said you had to go to, you're on your way to New York, did you say?
Yeah, we're still here.
Oh, okay. So now is New York like going back, or you guys taking a break?
Yeah, it's going back because this is where I'm from.
Okay.
I even lived in Jersey for a while. That's why our Airbnb is in Jersey. So
okay.
yeah.
Which part of Jersey? Which part of Jersey?
We're staying in Newark.
Oh yeah, well that's the New Ark, right? That's
yeah, indeed.
Place of genuine rich history for what we talking about right here, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
We got Georgetta also this morning. Go ahead, Abdul. You're gonna say something?
No, I was gonna say, yeah. So we went to the iconic masjid Malcolm Shabazz for Jumu'ah yesterday. So that was also kind of revisiting old stomping grounds as well. So that was that was wonderful. Absolutely,
that's fantastic. I have yet to get there to see the I don't know, what is it, a hotel, apartment building? What is it?
Oh yeah, they have that Malcolm Shabazz Gardens. Yeah.
Okay.
Not too far from there. I forget which side of Malcolm X Boulevard it's on, but it's close to the masjid. They also have the masjid Malcolm Shabazz market.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're doing a lot of good work up there.
Oh, absolutely, and have for years. I do owe myself and the community a visit. I haven't been there for a while. Georgetta, how you doing?
Alhamdulillah, Imam. Hanging in.
All right, that's good.
Assalamu alaikum, Georgetta.
Welcome, assalam. I owe you a phone call. I'll get it today, inshallah.
No problem, Georgetta. It's good to hear your voice. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, darling, I'll help you with that.
Okay.
But I need to do your blood sugar too at the same time.
Okay, blood sugar. Okay, what just a minute.
Yeah. All right, Tyson, come on through, bro.
Alhamdulillah. No, it's all good. I love hearing the community connecting, and it's a beautiful thing. So yeah. But if you want me to jump in and
that right now I mean you know how we do. It's family, man. So come on through, do you? It's your time right now.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, all good. All right. Well, let me go ahead and oh yeah, all right. It says oh, you gotta make me the thing.
Your co-host, right?
Co-host.
Oh, I made Nisa the co-host. Nisa ain't trying to be the co-host. Let's see, withdraw the co-host. Nothing personal, Nisa. So well, the link it was it faked me out. It did a hezzy on me. All right. Now you got it.
Okay, cool. I mean, let me see. The desktop too. Yep. Okay. All right. Bismillah. All right. Inshallah. This is what I began to talk about a little bit last week. So we'll bring this back, which is our dear brother, ancestor, Nat Turner, and setting the stage for it. Just recapping a little bit of what we've done thus far. By the time we get to Nat Turner, by the time we get to our dear brother Nat, who's I mean, this is also part of what makes our conversation about him right now very, very important. This happened in August of 1831. So we're in August of 2024 right now. And a number of the events that are represented in this book took place in the month of August, which then later in the 60s or 70s, based on the historical example of Comrade George Jackson and a number of other brothers who were political prisoners, in the US, mainly out here on the West Coast, there's this tradition now that some folks refer to as Black August. And when that originated, the way that it was brought to me was, of course, connected to political, Black, radical, revolutionary history of our people here in the United States, but then the history of our people globally. So there are things that are tied to Marcus Garvey. Matter of fact, is today Garvey's birthday? Is that right? Hold on, let me look that up. Marcus Garvey's birthday is around this time. Let's see. Today. Wow. Yep. MashaAllah. So Marcus Garvey's birthday is August 17th. You have the beginning of the Haitian Revolution in the month of August. You have the events of Nat Turner unfolding in the month of August. There are so many, like the list is a very long, well-documented list of events that are very, very important in the history of our community. And when I'm talking about our community, I'm talking about it globally, not just here in the United States, of major political, revolutionary, radical events that begin in the month of August. So it's a powerful story. It's very important history, and similar to what we've done all throughout, and like one of the main themes of this book, Carry On Tradition, it's reclaiming our story and retelling our story in a way that is outside of the view, the gaze, the imperial colonial product of white folks who have tried to take our history and turn it into a commodity that is beneficial to them. So we don't really know the true power of what we come from. It's much easier to control a people. Garvey said, a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. You want to undercut a people, take their knowledge of self away from them. That's one thing that can, expedite that process. So with Nat Turner, his is a name that is way more familiar to a lot of us when it comes to this radical history. But even with that, I wanted to approach it in a way that centered it within the history of what Carry On Tradition is. It starts in 1441. By the time we get to Nat Turner, we're in 1831. That's almost 400 years of a tradition of resistance, rebellion, revolution making, all throughout this planet, but especially the Western Hemisphere. And I was just, this is more like a personal piece for me. I always felt disrespected by the way that our history, again, being presented by these other folks, how it just separated the context. It just made the history like these dots that weren't connected. So it'd be like, all right, this happened over here, this piece happened over here, something else happened over here, but we didn't understand the context of how it came about. So it didn't really, for me, it didn't make sense. Like, how did that happen? How do we get, like y'all were just talking about New York and Newark and all of that. Like, how did those communities come about? If we're talking about the Muslim community there, how did that happen? When we look at the history and see these brothers and sisters were here, they made these moves, then that evolved into something else. It makes more sense. You can see the formula of how it came about. So I like to connect those dots. You don't get a Nat Turner without the Haitian Revolution. You don't get a Nat Turner without, we talked about something a couple of weeks ago when I had come back from Louisiana, which was the Louisiana Revolt of 1811. You don't get a Nat Turner without all this history that was just here in what we now refer to as the United States of resistance and rebellion. It was a tradition. You don't get it without the stuff that took place with Gaspar Yanga, the brother that we talked about from Mexico, a sister that we're going to be talking about very soon in Cuba, it was just happening because it had been happening. It was the experience. It was the tradition of our people. And so it's important to place him as a dot in that story and connect those dots so we can see, oh, this is what we've been doing. It wasn't just our people were over here. A couple of things happened. Some folks escaped. Some folks resisted. Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, Civil War. Nah, it doesn't make sense. Let's connect those pieces. And in this book, I didn't tell all the stories because I just didn't have the time to do that. But I think it makes more sense as a way for those dots to be connected. All right, so cool. So here's Nat Turner. So the way that we embarked on telling the story of Nat Turner, I wanted to center his story in some of what made him extremely powerful, right? And this is common in these other stories that preceded him. But one thing that we know for sure, and when I'm not doing just carry on tradition, a lot of the work that I get to do, especially in the community, is tied to education. So I have this, I have these workshops that I do, and it's on like the history of education in this country, like how the system of education originated in this country. So I start with talking about there are different ways that different cultures of education. If we're looking at the three original communities that are a part of what is now the United States, you have the Native and Indigenous community because we're on their land. This is stolen land. You have the colonizers that came from England. So Native and Indigenous people had a culture of education, and it varied depending on what group of people we're talking about. You have the English. They had a culture of education, the way that they taught, the way that they learned. And then you have African peoples who we have different cultures as well. So I focus on, I give an example of Native and Indigenous people from the West Coast over here. I'll use the example of the Aztec. And with the Aztec, they had a system of compulsory education for all of their young people in Aztec society before the Spanish came in the 1500s. Every child in the Aztec society was educated by their community. They had schools, and they taught up to the equivalent of what would be maybe high school for us nowadays. And so they taught using their language, their cultural symbols, all of that. When it came to the English, their system of schooling was very different. And if you were poor in English society in the 1500s, the 1600s, you didn't have schooling, or it was very rare for you to have schooling. And if you did, you attended a school where it'd be a whole bunch of students, very few teachers, and instruction went however it did. In the African context, we can point to a lot of different examples. I like to use the example of Timbuktu because a number of our people, our ancestry comes from West Africa, and we most likely would have been impacted somehow, some way by that historical institution of Timbuktu. That's a university, but there are other learning institutions that existed that prepared people to get to the university. So there was a particular way that knowledge and information was delivered in that cultural experience. What happens when the English begin to colonize, their cultural preference becomes prioritized as the way that education is supposed to be delivered. I go through the first couple of schools. The very first school that was ever created in the English colony of Jamestown was not a school for English kids. It was a school that was supposed to propagandize Native Indigenous children to become more palatable for the English cultural appetite. It was going to change them from being Native and Indigenous people into English folks, basically. So you can't be who you are. We need you to accept our cultural mores and norms and all of that, right? So this school is created in 1620. And I make a point of that because Black folks were brought to Jamestown in 1619. So by the time the first school is created in Jamestown, there are Native and Indigenous people. Of course, their kids are there. You have English folks who have kids there, and you have Black people who are in Jamestown. And it's possible that some of them might have had kids by that time. Oh yeah, and those first Black folks end up in Jamestown in August of 1619. So that's another part of this Black August piece. So the first Black folks are brought to the colonial project that eventually becomes the United States of America in August of 1619. So there's that. Then another thing that happens as we get into the history of education, anytime there's a major uprising or rebellion that takes place on behalf of Black people, you'll see colonial laws, and then later on, you'll see laws in states under the Constitution, right? So once the United States begins to function under the Constitution, that get put on the books that say, we want to make it harder for Black people to have access to reading, writing, or literacy, because their reading, their writing, their ability to read books is making it harder for us to continue to enslave them. So that's one of the things that happens directly after the events of 1831 with Nat Turner. There are several statutes that we can look at that get placed on the books that say we don't want Black folks reading and writing. Why? Because Nat Turner was literate. And what was he reading? He was reading multiple books, but one book in particular was the Bible. And his reading and his understanding of that scripture inspired him to say, I got to stand up and I got to fight for my people to be free, because that's what my faith is convicting me to. I need to do that. I have to do that. And it's something that we see time and time again in the telling of this story. And it's just a true part of who we are. And then if we move from, this is getting to what, Imam Fahim has been bringing us through with these Rise sessions. A major part of what is at the foundation of our community when we talk about the Nation of Islam, then Imam Wadafuddin, his leadership, it's our faith. It's what we read. And Imam Fahim was talking about this in the khutbah yesterday. What was it? EVEDA, our education.
Right.
So in order for us to be able to do different things, it has to start with what we learn, the information that we're taking in. And we can learn in a whole bunch of different ways. You can learn in a school, you can learn in other spaces, but it's what we're reading, what we're learning, what we're taking in. And then I can even take that a little bit further into the Islamic tradition. What's the very first revelation that we've been taught that came down? Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. You gotta read. Reading, the understanding, our thinking. So when you read, that can help you then have a different viewpoint. We can see things differently. We can develop different perspectives. And then from those perspectives can then influence what's going to become in terms of our behavior, our decisions, and our actions, right? So with Nat Turner, the fact that he was able to read and what he was reading, and that wasn't necessarily uncommon when it came to our people. Again, the way that they want to tell the story is just, we was a whole bunch of folks that weren't seeking knowledge and information when we come from thousands and thousands of years of educational traditions that predate these people, right? So that's why it's just important for us to check the way that we've been propagandized to even see our own history and our own people. But anyway, his reading changed his viewpoint, not just on his faith, but on himself, his relationship to his people, and what he needed to do about the common experience that his people were having. And this is another part for me when I was talking about how when they tell the story, those dots are not connected. This makes way more sense. And this is true in his story. And now when we connect the dots, when you see Nat Turner, it makes the same sense as another brother in his spiritual path, 100+ years later, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who inspired by the same faith, inspired by the same text, developing a similar perspective or viewpoint I need to take action on behalf of myself, my family, my community, my people. And that's a tradition that was inspired by what his father did, inspired by what his grandfather did, inspired by all these other generations of folk who, reading the same text, I got to take action on behalf of myself, on behalf of my family, on behalf of my community, to address the condition that our people are experiencing that is unfair and unjust. So we start here. This image of Nat Turner I created, and again, I used AI tools. There's no official picture of Nat Turner. We don't know what he looked like. So there are some popular images that are out there, but nobody has the authorized photo of Nat Turner. So it's just a creative reimagining. But in this one right here, I talk about his early history, and I emphasize the fact that when he began reading, especially reading the scripture for his faith system, he was compelled to want to do something different. So I start him out as a young man who begins preaching to his people, because that's part of what he did. He was able to move to different parts of Southampton County, Virginia, and he would preach, to his people. And then the second part that I add into the story is the conversation about Virginia and slavery, Virginia being the first colony on behalf of the English, the first successful colony. So we know with Carry On Tradition, we start talking about the Portuguese first, because that's 1441. Then we bring in the Spanish, because that's Cristobal Colon crossing the Atlantic on behalf of Spain and beginning the colonization efforts here in the Western Hemisphere. Then the French get involved, the English get involved, all these other Western Europeans. So the story has been moving for us since the 1400s. But in terms of the English being quote unquote successful in colonizing land from native and indigenous people, that doesn't happen until 1607 with Jamestown. And immediately they take land, they begin to try to make money off of that land that they've taken. So they cultivate tobacco, other cash crops, and then cotton becomes king, a few generations later. And they make so much money off of that by stealing the land from native and indigenous people and brutally, forcibly enslaving our people. So we have this conversation about Virginia and slavery. And in here, if there are folks who have the book, great. If not, you can grab a copy of the book, but I talk about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, some of the famous Virginians. Matter of fact, like in the history of the United States under the Constitution, out of the first 16 presidents, Abraham Lincoln is president 16. I'm forgetting the number right now, but I think close to half of the first 16 presidents were Virginians, came from Virginia, because Virginia was the first colony, which gave it this prestige. And George Washington, of course, the first president of the United States, a Virginian. Thomas Jefferson, a Virginian. James Madison, a Virginian. And all of those Virginians who were presidents out of the first 16 all made money off of the forced enslavement of our ancestors. If we step outside of just the executive branch, and we look at the judicial branch, if we were to look at the legislative branch, you would see a number of people that come from Virginia who are also profiting off of the forced enslavement of our ancestors in those other positions within the federal government, of course, in state governments, but within the federal government, which is part of the reason why. And I think, Imam Fahim, you may have made a mention of this last week or the week before, which is part of the reason why this country has never at any point in time ever completely outlawed the enslavement of people. And when this country talks about enslaving people, who are they really speaking about? They're talking about Black people. All throughout the colonial period, 1607 to 1787, because the Constitution is drafted in 1787, comes into effect in 1789, slavery was never illegal. In the constitutional period, 1789 to the present day, slavery has never been illegal. because the 13th Amendment clearly says except as a punishment for a crime. And in our community, we know of hundreds and thousands, potentially millions of brothers and sisters who have been affected by the jail and prison system, who have been legally enslaved in this country. So we talk about them because that history of Virginia indentured servitude, forced enslavement, shapes the present moment, shapes why policing looks the way that it does, shapes the way that our schools look the way that they do, why curriculum is the way that it is. So many things that we're forced to deal with and navigate, and what our communities have been dealing with for generations. But we have that conversation in there, and how much Virginia profited off of the forced enslavement of our ancestors. There's a lot of great books that speak to this history too. There's one that I'm trying to think of right now, which talks about like how much money the United States made off of enslavement. The book, the title will come to me, or I'll just drop it in the chat. It's a great book, but it describes the institution of forced enslavement as a body. Like it talks about the limbs, the arms. It talks about like the chest of what drove it, the legs, the feet. It's an amazing book. Somebody might know the title of it, but if we don't remember it, I'll drop it in the thing. Then we get into the history of the uprising, the famous rebellion that takes place in August of 1831. And so much of the book is about reclaiming our history and reshaping the way that it's told. And I think for all of us on here, when we think about this history of resistance and rebellion for our people, we don't look at it as that was the wrong thing for our people to do. But I'm like Imam Fahim was using a refrain yesterday. If you believe it, then what will you do? So a refrain that I use constantly with this book is righteous rebellion. I want to change that thinking in our mind. This was the right thing for people to do. Like our ancestor, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, he talked about how if we're not careful, the newspapers will have us, like loving the one that's doing the oppressing and hating the one that's being oppressed, and is resisting in a righteous fashion. And that's what the media here right now wants us to do for our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Gaza. They want us to side with the Zionist state of Israel that is occupying and actively colonizing and engaging in a genocidal war effort to wipe our brothers and sisters off the planet. They want us to side with them, not the brothers and sisters who are being oppressed. So righteous rebellion, that's what this was. That's what it's always been, but that's what this was when it comes to Nat Turner. So we get into that. So we start talking about on the fateful night of August 21st, 1831. So in August of 1831, part of this tradition of Black August, Nat Turner's revolt erupted, igniting a series of events that would forever mark the history of Southampton County, Virginia. The revolt commenced at Joseph Travis's farm, catching the white occupants entirely off guard under cover of darkness. Turner and his fellow rebels, numbering about a dozen at that point, struck with swift and deadly precision with the focus of freeing the forcibly enslaved and ending this moral evil of slavery in the United States. I think that's another piece too, that looking at how these people have tried to tell our story in such an incompetent way. Our people are not presented as people. When you present folks as people, there are real reasons. Imam Fahim yesterday was talking about emotions and then breaking the word up, emotion. What brings things out? What activates it, either us moving forward or potentially moving back. When you understand that we're all human beings, of course we have emotions. Of course, there are things that motivate us, that inspire us to do what we do. And they didn't give you the inspiration, the story. That's such an important part of a story. Like, what is motivating people to do what they do? like thinking about, and I know I could talk a lot, right? But I'll start to wrap up with Nat Turner in this. Like one of the most popular genres of like storytelling right now in like US culture is this superhero storytelling, like with these movies, the Marvel stories. I'm a big fan of comic books. My father, he raised me up on that. And, you know, some of my favorite characters come from the Marvel universe. Spider-Man, Black Panther, of course, Daredevil, a number of other characters. The X-Men, great stories. There you always know why those people are doing what they're doing. You know their motivations. With Spider-Man, there's this another refrain: with great power comes great responsibility. He was taught that by his uncle who ends up getting killed. And Peter Parker, who later on becomes Spider-Man, felt like he didn't do what he could have done with his powers and his abilities to try to save his uncle. So you know, like you know that story deeply. And like his reasons deeply why he wants to do what he does. With Black Panther, we could talk about what motivates him. Some of the characters of the women within, you know their motivations, you know their reasons, which humanizes their story more. For us, they don't tell the story that way. Why did Nat Turner resist? Why did he rebel? But we know. It was a moral evil. And then, because of what he was reading, his education, it changed what he did, how he saw himself, how he saw his people, how he saw his responsibility to his people, how he felt if he was going to be living the reality of his faith, I cannot accept this oppression by a false master, by a false God. I have to stand up. Multiple things were part of the inspiration and the motivation. Being an educated, articulate, charismatic being, he was able to communicate that information to other brothers and sisters, and not to persuade them. There were multiple folks who were like, we with that too. We just needed the strength of numbers to be like, yeah, it's time for us to do something. So in August of 1831, this amazing historical event transpires where our brothers and sisters stood up with the goal of liberating themselves and dismantling this evil institution of forced enslavement in this country and beyond. They embarked on their purpose. And over the course of the next couple of days, they fought valiantly in order to make that a reality. And then the way that we ended, and I've talked about this a couple of times, and so now I'm wrapping up, getting ready to pass it back to Imam Fahim. These legacy parts, I think, are really, really important. And it's an important way to tell our stories too, because we all have to carry the responsibility that we've been given. And Quran, Allah tells us that, you know, people will not be burdened with more than what they can bear. And it's, so now stepping away from that expression of an ayat in the Quran, it's our responsibility to understand that, the education piece, to view it in a specific light for us as individuals, as a community, and then to engage in action and behavior based on that. And what Nat Turner, what the brothers and sisters in the 1830s here in this country were experiencing, especially in the southern part of this country, was a very real experience. And they had to make very real decisions about what they were going to do in the face of that experience. They did their part. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Again, the way that they try to tell our history, that's not part of the story. It was, oh, Dr. King did what he did. Malcolm did what he did. Sister Harriet did what she did. And that's that. No context. But what is the context? What is the tradition? We did what we did for ourselves, for our family, for our people, for our progeny, because that was our responsibility in that moment in time. I did my part, speaking about the generation that Nat Turner came from. We did our part. What are y'all gonna do? Because the goal has not been achieved. What are y'all gonna do? That's in the legacy photo. Of course, that's in the story being told here on the page for the legacy history. And the tradition has carried on because every generation of our people since 1441, there have been brothers and sisters that have answered that call. And they've said, we will carry on tradition for our people to be free, guided by a proper knowledge of who we are, a proper knowledge in relation to our Lord, a proper understanding of we're setting an example for ourselves and for those close to us. And then also an understanding that we have the moral high ground, the spiritual high ground, and we do what we do and we don't transgress. And I just think it's a very, very important story, time and time again, to be told. And there's just so much value in all of these stories. But I think in the story of Nat, especially in August, you know what I'm saying? And this is, we've been doing this carry on tradition piece in conjunction with Rise. And we started this in Ramadan. I didn't know that we'd be talking about Nat Turner in August. I didn't know. It's just the timing is the timing. It's Allah's timing. But it makes sense. It makes sense for us to be revisiting the story of our brother right now. And, you know, a brother in faith, when we talk about like people of the book, right? Inspired by his connection to his people, his understanding of his faith system, his relation to his creator. This brother was moved and moved people and then made moves that reverberate to this day. So yeah, it's fitting for us to talk about our brother Nat today. So yeah, that's part of our tradition. And in the legacy photo, we got to carry on tradition. So Imam Fahim, that's it for me. I'm gonna fall back. I'm gonna stop my share, and I'm gonna go on mute.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. So beautiful, so beautiful. And mashallah, were everyone to admit, you know, that's fresh information. That's vegetables off the farm. You understand what I'm saying? That's good stuff. Now, so let me get my Bismillah in here before I take off. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah. So y'all understand why I'm justified to have Amir have Tyson riding shotgun. It's cocked and loaded. It's like, okay, what's up? Let's ride. Allahu Akbar. All right. So going to the EV, just to cap it off and move on. Of course, we're going to go to what we have to do for our part, but I'm going to exploit this as an opportunity to give something of Imam Muhammad's hermeneutics. I won't say tafsir because we're not talking about from the Quran, but we're talking about in the seminarian language of the West. Hermeneutics would be the language, and also it has to do with interpretation, the way that we abstract, meaning pull out, the way we pull out knowledge from whatever it is that we're looking. And this is the thought style. I should say this is from the thought style, the education of Imam Muhammad rahimahullah alayhi. Sort of like everybody, I think most of y'all have had some experience with perhaps ChatGPT by now in some way. It's a tool. It's a tool. Imam Muhammad, his language is a tool. In my IG, it's the Instagram, so people sometimes don't know what that means, IG. Then in the Instagram account, what Aisha, which she actually, Aisha Williams, Islam, she puts up the choice of what comes out. And this week it was language, logic, sensitivity. Just those three words: language, logic, sensitivity. I do have time, but I'm not going to take the time to teach what does that mean. But that's one of the tools from Imam Warthani Muhammad. See, so but learning from Imam Warthani Muhammad, you get this tool belt. You strap on and you going to work, right? You going to the construction site, right? And you boom, you put your tool belt on, and so whatever the job calls for, it's a tool right there close to the main things. The usual things, your main tools, they're always right there with you. You're right there on your hip. Pull them out, put them to work. Okay, same way with Imam Muhammad, the tools of language and principles and heuristics and rules of thumbs and algorithms, and these are the things that Imam Muhammad has given us. Okay, so this is the lesson right now in terms of the language of Imam Muhammad, understanding that. So Tyson brought up what we brought up for Jumu'ah, and we're trying to make clear, when I say we at home, Masjid al-Wartheen, we're still trying to make clear that direct line to the Jumu'ah Live. Blog Talk is going, mashallah. We kicked them out. They didn't kick us out. So, any case, so Facebook, so it's like our preference is to get it to the point where, hey, just click on the Jumu'ah link on masjidalwartheen.org, go straight to the Jumu'ah. Right now, that's not the case. What happens is when we go live, we send it to Imam Fahim Shoaib, the Facebook. Well, I linked it this week to the Imam Fahim Shoaib, but go to Facebook, Fahim Shoaib, you're gonna find it there from yesterday, and others as well. Now, this is just set up for Nat Turner. Imam Muhammad, as it bears on what we heard from what Tyson said, right? And so you could hear in what Tyson was saying, it's like, oh, August and August and August, right? And we have Tyson, how long you say we've been doing the what's called Black August? How long?
It goes, we could say like early 70s.
Oh no.
So we're approaching, we're about 50 years of the tradition.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, well. And then you saying, and I didn't know we are gonna be talking about that Nat Turner in August. Yeah, it's like these are epiphanies, like these are inspirational moments. These are dude. So yeah, God's hand is on that for sure. Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, it's like we talked about EVEDA, right? And so the EVEDA is, as you know, but this is for everybody else present. Education. You can actually, when I write it in the real symbolic form for the fullness of the E equals MC squared value, meaning so you get everything in one formula. It would be E to the third power, V to the third power. E also goes to the third power, I'm pretty sure, but for sure squared, and then D and A, right? That's interesting. Even when you say it, you have to say D and A, D and A at the end. This comprises your behavior's DNA. Your behavior's DNA goes back to the EVE, and of course Eve is in there. So you see, this can just keep going, but we're not going to do it. So what I want to just deal with the E, since we talked about education, right? So you have the education, you have the values and the viewpoint. So you have the viewpoint, and then you have the emotions that come in consequence of that viewpoint. And again, I haven't said all the threes in there. And then you have the emotions that come from the viewpoint. Then you have the disposition. Then you have the action. And FYI, all of this comes from, over the years, reasoning back from the 17th chapter, the 84th verse of the Quran, which when you hear the sound of the word for disposition, you also hear the term shackle. Shakila is what the Arabic is, but that's also the place from which we get the word shackle. And Imam Muhammad has a full teaching about that, and about iron, and about culture, all of that inside of talking about the Shakila, the disposition, and the iron, and how the iron, like a train track, holds you to a particular discipline, which is also another D. But get to the point, Fahim. Here's the point. Imam Muhammad, this viewpoint, these glasses, when you put on the W.D. Muhammad glasses, talking about superheroes. So he put on the W.D. Muhammad glasses. And if anybody who has, side note, if you haven't seen that They Live, if you haven't seen that movie, go back and get it sometime. You can find it now. It's very old. But it's telling the straight truth. And I'm just thinking, I think a character that I'm just about to mention to you all right now. Let me Tyson, you were going to, let me see, you were going to put something in the chat, and you reminded me I want to put something in the chat, but I got to get away. So Night John, I'll have to say it. I have to be more competent than I am to do what I'm thinking about doing. Night John is spelled like all one word, Nightjohn. Night John is a story about slaves sneaking to learn how to read. That's what the whole thing is about. Very, very good, very, very important story. Oh, okay, there's it. Oh, you know what? That book, I buy books all the time, audio books particularly. That there's a link to it, at least to get you started on the Night John thing. That book you just put up, Tyson, The Half Has Never Been Told. I own that on an audio book. And so now, there's stuff I always know, okay, I'm gonna get to it, and haven't got to it. So I haven't broke the audio cover of that, but I will soon now, inshallah. All right, Fahim. All right. So what's the big deal about August? This is it's called Black August, right? So I could just spend a whole lot of time on the black side of it. Black is the soul, black is innocence, black is the original nature, black is mastery. See, there's a lot of ways to take black, and there are those that take black only in the way that is not as progressive, I'll say, from the human nature perspective. You can't just take that. That's other, because on another level, it's like be lack. You be lacking economics, you be lacking education, you be lacking, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a positive and a negative side of that, just like with the cross. There's a positive and a negative side to the cross, but you have to know both of them. But so we're talking about the positive side of Black August, right? So Imam Muhammad, the glasses that Imam Muhammad gives, we said, okay, you hear it, you think, you want to find out, maybe there's something in there. Okay, so let's go. So then with all these connections, with all of these affirmations here, it's August. Okay, so the glasses of Imam W. Muhammad. Let's look at August, right? Okay, so when you look at August, what is August? It's August. Okay, what do you see familiar in there? AU. I wasn't sure. I said, see the little bit of knowledge that's in the back of my head. And the AU. Okay, on the periodic chart, I wonder what does AU stand for? And sure enough, y'all know by now, gold. It stands for gold, right? So that's AU. So you got gold, right? And then gust was gust. You can just go with spirit on that. So it's a golden spirit. So so August, and that's just the beginning. The August it's the time of a golden spirit. So that golden spirit is what we see in the Nat Turners and the Harriet, and everybody in that, I'm going to use this term pantheon, or this galaxy of stars, in this righteous rebellion, this righteous revolution. Was it righteous revolution or righteous rebellion? Which one?
All of it.
Okay, all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got that. So if you go with the black August, right? So you got black. So now you got black gold just to start with. You know, it's like black gold right there, and the black in the way that we described it, right? With all of its multiplicity of deep, rich meanings, right? Black is also mystery, right? In the Nation of Islam, when you came in, you got rid of the slave name and you were given an X. And that X is a sign of the mystery because you don't know who you are. We don't know who you are. Nobody knows, but God knows who you are. And then soon you keep living this way. In time, your Muhammad is going to come out, your Nasif is going to come out, your Latif is going to come out, etc. And then, okay, then you throw away the X, quote unquote, put it in a memorization place, a memorial place, put that to the side, and now wear your name, right? We used to call them holy names, right? So, any case, so that's black. So Black August, right? So that, so golden spirit, right? August, golden spirit, but it doesn't stop there. You still got the glasses of Imam W. Mohammed on. So it said, okay, so then where is gold on the periodic chart? On the periodic chart, it's 79, all right, 79. And so it's like, okay, 79. Where's the next place you go? You go to the Quran. Let me, I want to read it to you. If it was a different thing, I would have pulled it out a different way, right? It's 79, chapter 79 is Surat al-Nazi'ah. Surat al-Nazi'ah. And in fact, I believe it's the first, don't hold me to this. I have a tendency to think, well, I know it's, if 78 is not the beginning of the last 30th, then 79 is right there with no matter. And what is this? What is An-Nazia? An-Nazia, this translator on the first order, is translates it as those who pull out. So you have to go to the hood first, right? We talk about Black August, right? So those who pull out. Now, if you're in the hood or you're on the block and somebody said, man, he pulled out on me, man. You know, he said, man, the homeboy just pulled out, right? What do you mean pulled out? You pull out that strap. It's like, you know what this is. That's, of course, for the thieves. But in any case, the point is that you pull out your weapons, right? And listen to what God says in the first verse. But it says, here's Yusuf Ali, let's go with that. That's what we're more familiar with. And they put in parentheses, by the angels. That means that it's not actually the angels, but this is the one, or rather not only the angels, but this is the one that Yusuf Ali said he wants you to think about, right? It's the angels who tear out, all this parenthetical, tear out the souls of the wicked with violence. Those who tear out the souls of the wicked with violence. Hello, Nat Turner. Nat Turner is acting, you know, Allah used human beings as angels as well, and all the angels ain't lovey-dovey. There are verses where the angels, it's like the universe didn't shed a tear, something like that. It was unflinching. So the angels unflinching. It's like, look, man, we're on a mission from God, period. There ain't nothing emotional about nothing that we do. It's like, it's what we do. That's the command, that's the order, that's what happens. That's that. So those angels, right? And so Nat Turner is like one of those angels, those who tear out the souls of the wicked with violence. That's God in the Quran. It's like you don't have to read any of the other revolutionaries that pull out. You just go to God. God said, no, use the others, of course. But I'm just saying, God said, look, yeah, some of you all were created to pull out. Do that, and you're following my will. All right, so that's as much as I'm gonna say about that. I haven't done anything with the fact that it's atomic numbers 196.96, but you got two 96s in there, so that would fit right with the Iqra Bismi Rabbika Alladhi Khalaq, being that 96 was multiplied twice. Rather, it was added twice. When you add all those numbers, I said I wasn't going to do it, didn't I? Either way, when you add all those numbers up, 1969696, it comes out to 4, right? And when you get to 4, 4 represents completion. So everything receives its nourishment in 4 measures, right? So this is the whole which is the most valuable element, at least from a social perspective, socioeconomic perspective, is gold, right? So all that's gold, and that history is gold. And I'm gonna leave it to Tyson. Tyson will give us the rest of what's there that I'm not touching on because he got all that history. All right, so alhamdulillah. So thank you, Tyson, and thank all for your patience. Now, so to continue with our journey with Imam W. Mohammed, and the last resurrection in the Renaissance. Let's see if we can share here. We're just going to cover as much as we can. It's okay. We follow the spirit, the golden spirit, I'm going to say now. And where we at?